I'm really excited
Were
to do
the
this.
Crusades justified? Was it a response?
So day 2 of a rabbit hole here. We're gonna do some historical analysis with our favorite patriot of all time, Asmongold TV, of course. Our favorite historian, our favorite historical patriot, you might say. I will say I have a history degree, so hopefully I can add to this conversation here. Hopefully, right? So our argument here is that they they were justified? Question mark. Right? I have a feeling. We don't have the answer yet. I have a feeling that he's gonna argue that they were justified. Because I think this is the original video here. We're not just saying they were justified, we're saying they were awesome. They were fucking sick. And I'm excited to get into this because this is day 2 of this YouTube account rabbit hole, and I think we're on to a good start here. And this is something that I can actually discuss, and this might be a long one here.
Were the Crusades?
So I think we're sped up already, but I'm definitely gonna pause it a lot. This is a 14-minute video. Yeah, so this is the original right here. We're saying why they were awesome. This is a 14-minute video. It's a 22-minute react from him. And I'm not only going to break down PaxTube's points. I'm going to look at how Asmon thinks these are awesome or just justified. Maybe he takes a lighter position. He's going to use some historical nuance here and tell me, were the Crusades justified? Okay, so I'm excited to get into this.
It's justified. Was it a
I want to
response
see
to
what is
militarism and incursions into Europe by Muslim?
what does he know already about the Crusades here before watching anything? Because he's extremely malleable. He's gonna dictate his position. Whether right, he's gonna take his personal bias, but if something kind of confirms that bias already, and add some context, he's gonna take their word for it. So having some prior knowledge is very helpful here, and having a prior position. But I have a feeling he doesn't have a prior position, or his prior position is already on this side. And that's the issue with being as malleable as he is, because your bias is really easily confirmed by stuff like this.
Crusaders or Muslim fighters or not. I don't know. A lot of people view the Crusades as a bad thing, but this video says the Crusades were awesome, actually. Okay.
Yeah, so
Let's
at the
hear
end
it.
of this
In
14 minutes, I
2005,
think
the
he's
film
gonna
Kingdom of Heaven
take
was released to the world.
this position.
The film takes place during the major historical conflict between the Christian world and the Islamic world that we today call the Crusades. Beginning in 1096, Catholic Europeans embarked on quests to retake the Holy Land and spread the faith to new areas of the globe.
Yep.
So, I think you can just be as dumb as you want. I'm not saying he's dumb here, but I'm saying the audience is dumb. Where you can kind of just be like, yep, I know that. And the audience is like, dude, that's my guy. He knows about this shit. That's my fucking guy right there. So it's hard to tell how much he actually knows already going into this. But I don't think it matters for him. I think whatever he's gonna hear, he's gonna like.
Yep.
You would think that in a historical drama like this, we would get a fair portrayal of both sides, with the nuances of the conflict being shown. We don't. The film portrays the Christian Crusaders as bloodthirsty barbarians, while their Islamic opponents are shown as intelligent and peaceful.
To be fair, Saladin was very highly respected, even by Europeans.
Wow. Blown away. Yeah, so that's true. And nope, he was not. It is true. And if we look in this time period, the most advanced civilization in the world, besides China, in this time period, were the Middle Eastern, and maybe more. If we use the word prosperous, it's definitely China. But if we're talking about advanced things like mathematics, things like medicine, things like science, and that's the whole note of in this clip. I don't know if he's gonna actually show it, but the whole clip is, you got to pull off your troops. And they come to an agreement here, and in the end of the conversation, he goes, we'll send you our physicians. And it's kind of a historical nod, not just to have this bias that, man, they were so much nicer than the Christians. It's also to show this historically accurate point that they had better medicine at the time than the Europeans.
He was very highly respected.
Now, it should be
I'm
said
not saying all of them were, but he was.
that Ridley Scott, the director of the film, is an atheist, so we can see why he deliberately decided to portray things this way.
So, let's
But
give it a
regardless of
second.
Scott's motivation, the portrayal of the Crusades in Kingdom of Heaven reflects how they've been understood by
So, let me point this out. This is going to be a long situation here. But if we're saying that he's going to be biased because he's an atheist, he's going to be biased towards the Muslims. Why is that a point of bias? Why are we acting like Muslims or Islam is not a religion? Why are we acting like he's going to be biased towards one religion over the other if he doesn't coincide with any religion? Does that make sense? Wouldn't the assumption be the natural assumption? He doesn't believe in either of them. So maybe he's going to have a neutral point of view. Why are we going into this saying automatically he's going to be biased against the Christians because he is an atheist? That doesn't quite make sense to me.
majority of Westerners for decades.
That's true. I think that the perspective that a lot of Americans have is that the Crusades were they were European aggression towards the Middle East. I think this is accurate.
Documentaries like the History Channel's Mankind, the Story of Us single out the Crusades as a uniquely evil chapter of human history.
I think of all the wars fought over religion, the Crusades belong in their own category.
It is
Really? I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of crazy wars.
one of the most
What great historical commentary here. Right? So when we're watching stuff like this, and we're just like as biased as these historians can be, at least they know their shit. Right? At least they know what they're talking about. At least they have a frame of reference for what they're saying. They're saying that out of all the religious wars in history, which there are a ton of, the Crusades are in a different category, which is completely taken out of context because he could be having a conversation about the scale as well. There's no other religious war on the same scale as the Crusades. So, and then, so we're taking that out of context, and his reaction is, "Wow, there's a lot of wars." Yeah, that's true, but what are you gonna compare it to? Does that make sense?
shameful undertakings ever embarked upon by our species.
So far.
In all of these
He
cases,
thought he
the
ate.
same narrative is presented.
And I
One-
think actually I think the Crusaders were probably like this. I think this probably happened all the time, is that you had guys that spent 10 years down in the Middle East and they were G's. They had power, they had authority, they were well known, they were powerful, and then you told them, hey, you've got to go back home and go be a potato farmer again. And this guy says, bro, what the fuck? Like, I used to lead a fucking team of 20 guys. We used to raid villages. I used to eat meat every day. Fuck this. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
What is he talking about?
day, crazy
I'm
Christians
I'm not sure what he's talking about.
decided to attack the peaceful and
I mean,
enlightened
it's so manifestly obvious that it was even the plot for Rambo, The First Blood.
So the plot for Rambo is based on a historical myth that there were soldiers left over. Was it the Philippine War? Or no, Vietnam War. Right, that we just left soldiers there. Is that what he's pivoting his point on? And that's a historical myth that we just left people there. So I don't know what he's talking about here. I'm really not sure.
This has been the case ever since there have been cases.
In Islamic world
I don't
just
know.
because they could. The events are held as a staple of why we need separation
No,
of church and
so-
state, and why Catholicism
This is another straw man argument that PaxTube is making, is that historians argue that
just because they could.
that's an issue, is that we're saying that they did it, or historians argue that they did it just because they could. No one's saying that. Like, when we look at historical events like this, you look at why. There's always a why, right? And if you use hindsight, you can say these whys are bad, but there's always a why. There's only a couple real cases of people doing things just because they can in history, right? There was a motivation here behind the Crusades. There's a religious motivation, economic motivation, and just a power motivation. It's not just because you can. Right? Saying you want to overpower the other religion, you have some shame in losing. It's just because you can. Right? That's a poor argument. That's an ahistorical argument that no one is making. No one who takes themselves seriously is making that argument. So using that as kind of a crux and saying this is why they're wrong is bad argument.
The events are held as a staple of why we need separation of church and state, and why Catholicism should have no place in government. We're led to believe that if Christians have power again, they'll
Well,
start...
it's very obvious Catholicism does have a huge role in government. Like, I mean,
Okay. I'm
same way
curious.
that Muslim countries are generally informed. Their laws are informed by Sharia law and by their own culture. In America and in Europe, it's generally informed by Christianity. Not
Um I don't really think so. Right? I think more so lately, yeah. And in the past, yeah, religion was important, but if we're talking about just the laws and the creation, or the government itself, I don't. We're a secular country, how it should be.
entirely, but to an extent.
To what extent? I would see, that's my issue with his commentary. Is to what extent? Can we be a little bit more specific about a commentary here? It's hard to dissect what he means or even be informed by anything he's saying if he's just not elaborating at all. If that makes sense. He's just saying words, right, in the right order. So if we rewind this.
Their laws are informed by Sharia law and by their own culture.
So Muslim countries are informed by, let's say, Islamic countries. Religious states are informed by the religion.
In America and in Europe, it's generally informed by
America and Europe is
Christianity.
generally
Not
informed by
entirely,
Christianity.
but to an extent.
To an extent. So what a good commentator, because he's not a good, maybe he's had some practice in the last 8 months. I don't want to say this at the beginning of his foray into kind of social issues. He's been doing it for a while now. But I feel like you can tell he's kind of new at this because I don't know how to word this. I guess because he knows his audience is just going to buy what he says, and the people watching on YouTube is just going to buy what he says. But, like, you can't just say that without elaborating at all. If you want to take yourself seriously is any kind of, like, legit commentator, you can't just say to an extent.
Unnecessary wars of religion, just like the Crusades.
Yes.
But in reality, there are few events in history more misunderstood than the Crusades.
Really?
This is why I'm making this video.
Okay, let's
the
see it.
popular understanding of the Crusades is dead wrong, and
Wow.
I'm here to explain why.
All right, let's
In
hear
this
it.
video, you'll be finding out why the Crusades were not only morally justified, but were actually a historic achievement. Buckle up.
Ooh. That's a tough argument. A historic achievement. What if I just? It'd be hilarious if I just end this and be like, "You're right, big Crusades guy." Now, maybe I'll maybe I'll get the Pete Headscath Crusade tattoo on my chest after this one. Deus Vult. Yeah, this makes me want to play Crusader King so bad.
Because there's a lot to cover.
Wow.
Let's travel back in time to 600 AD,
It was a long time ago.
roughly 500 years before the First Crusade. This is a map of the Christian world at that time. All the highlighted areas show where Christianity had spread and
Yeah.
become the majority religion.
That's a
Wait
lot.
a minute, is that the Middle East and North Africa? Yes, it is. These
That's not a surprise at all. Yeah, of course.
two areas used to be Christian.
Yeah.
People today think of these as Muslim lands, but that was not always
No.
the case. It all began when Christianity spread far and wide after being legalized by Emperor Constantine the Great with the Edict of Milan. This
Oh.
led to the Christianization of both the Western and Eastern Roman Empire. Even as the western part of the empire fell to barbarians, Christianity remained, and most of the
Yeah.
barbarians also converted.
Yeah.
So if that happened in
See
Europe,
that?
what happened in the Middle East and North Africa? In the mid-600s,
So, this is a very complicated time in history, especially after the fall of the Western Empire. But, I think it's important to know that the religion of Islam didn't exist in this time period. And also it's like he's just saying like, yeah, I buy that. That's a historical yeah. So my my problem is if you're in this position of making the video, couldn't you just say anything? And he's like, yeah, I buy that. That sounds right to me.
Yeah.
So if that happened in
See
Europe,
that?
what happened in the Middle East and North Africa? In the mid-600s, Arab warlords sprang out of the Arabian Peninsula and began conquering everything in their path. They brought with them their own religion, Islam, and unlike European barbarians,
Oh,
they
shit.
did not convert to Christianity. The Middle East at the time was dominated by two superpowers, the Christian Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire, and the Zoroastrian Sassanid Empire. Unfortunately for them both, they had just fought each other in a gigantic war lasting 25
Does it feel like we're missing a chapter here?
dominated by two superpowers, barbarians, conquering everything in their path. In the mid-600s, Arab
So-
warlords
Arab warlords that just happen to be Muslim. I feel like it would have been important to establish the creation of Islam as a religion and Muhammad in his lifetime
sprang out
leading
of
the
Arabian
conquering of this southwestern part of modern day Saudi Arabia and Yemen.
Peninsula and began conquering
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's.
everything in their path. They brought with them their own religion, Islam, and unlike European barbarians,
Oh,
they
shit.
did not
So, yeah, my issue is. Another issue is just. It just feels biased already. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like there's just this innate bias. You're saying. Here are these like great Christians minding their own business in the Christian land, and then out of nowhere there's these Arab warlords spreading this bad boy religion of Islam. Right, I feel like it's playing on our modern. I don't say our. but the world's modern day biases against Islam. That's what it feels like.
convert to Christianity. The Middle East at the time was dominated by two superpowers, the Christian Eastern Roman Empire, or the Byzantine Empire, and the Zoroastrian Sassanid Empire. Unfortunately for them both, they had just fought each other in a gigantic war lasting 25 years
Holy
and drained
shit.
themselves of key resources. Because of this, neither was prepared for the invasions that hit them. The Byzantines lost all of Africa and the Levant, while the Sassanid Empire collapsed completely. The most important loss
My
for the Christian
God.
world, though, was the loss of the Holy Land. By 900 AD, Islam had expanded, by conquest, all the way to France and southern Italy. Now, I'm not
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
See, that's what I mean. Right? It's just these modern day innate biases that are applied to historical thinking. That just, it's what they criticize other people for doing. Right? Like taking modern day. This is what people like him complain about is we take our modern day ethics and modern day morals and apply them to historical thinking. And that's what we're doing now. That's what he's doing now, and that's what this creator is doing now.
going to moralize about this. Conquest and wars of expansion
Yeah.
have been common all through
Ah.
history, and Islam followed in that same mold. However, Islam did take things a step further with its concept of jihad, or holy
Sure.
war. Muhammad was a conqueror who took slaves,
Uh-oh.
and Islam has sought to emulate his example ever since. As a side note, this is also why slavery has always been common in the Islamic world and continues to be practiced there to this very day. But regardless of the
I hear that a lot. They have slaves still.
morality of the Islamic conquests, they were, nonetheless, invaders.
Is what I mean. Right? Why can't I make that same argument about Christians? Slavery was the most prevalent in the Christian world. Right? So when we make these arguments, it's just it's like you throw little darts in there to kind of ping at these biases that the people watching this video has. I don't know if that makes sense. That's like you're like feeding a little bit. You're throwing a little treats to kind of work to this implicit bias, or in this case, your explicit bias.
Who invaded the Christian world.
Damn.
Christians in conquered lands were second-class citizens, and many were taken as slaves. Christian inhabitants had to pay an enormous tax called the dhimmi tax, and their churches were often shut down. Because of Islamic policies, over the centuries, Christianity in the Middle East and North Africa shrunk from a large majority to a tiny minority. But it actually gets even worse.
How the Islamic escalation forced Christendom down?
During the days of
Is
the
this
Roman
true?
Empire,
Okay, so a couple things here. Right, this is the treatment of minority religion is a hard conversation to have when we're talking about 1,000 years ago, because our expectation is that completely benevolent government with no punishment for the minority religion, but that wasn't the world we lived in 1,000 years ago. So let's talk about how Christians in the Christian world treated Muslims, treated minority Muslim populations. And once you start having that argument, where you talk about the Reconquista or the Inquisition, I know that's later, but I think that even works more towards my example here. Or if we talk about how the Romans treated whatever minority religion, even Christianity, or when they became Christians. Right? So when we have this conversation, say, oh my God, these Muslims are treating the Christians so bad in Muslim territory, in Christian minority territory. It's not a good argument when you look at it in the entire like historical context here. It's just not a good argument. Because it's hard to find a place in where we 1060, right? Or 1100. Let's say the 12th century, where the minority religion is treated well, or even treated equally. Very hard to find a place. So if we go comparatively and say they were all treated bad, but the conversation is who got treated worse under as a minority group. It's hard to say that the Christians under Muslim control were treated worse than minority religions under Christian control. It's a hard argument to make.
How the Islamic escalation forged Christendom's down.
During the days
Is
of
this
the Roman
true?
Empire, the
And
Mediterranean Sea.
I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Let me pause on
How
this
does-
title here. Right? This is historically is a dangerous argument to make. I'm not going to say that he's going to make a bad argument already. I haven't watched it yet. But what I'm saying is I've heard a lot of arguments where people say their hand was forced. They had no choice in the matter. The Christians in this case had no choice. Is the argument we're going to make. I'm not going to argue against that yet until I hear the points. But where I've heard this argument, the Civil War, right? These southern states had no choice but to secede from the Union, and that's an argument I've heard. Yeah. So I've heard it a couple times. I can't think right now. But when you start making the historical arguments that the other people had no choice but to react in this way, is not good. Right, and that puts in some really like false assumptions, false historical assumptions where you're putting your own biases into historical situations. Because I'm going to guess when we get to the point when we have this conversation here about how they had no choice, I'm going to point out maybe a choice that they could have had. And then I'm going to go eat dinner.
Islamic escalation forged Christendom's down.
During the days of
Is
the
this
Roman
true?
Empire, the Mediterranean Sea was a breadbasket of commerce and trade.
Yeah, sure.
The Romans had successfully stamped out piracy and created some of the safest waterways in the entire world. Islamic
This video is propaganda. Muhammad freed slaves. Well, it's probably both. I mean, it's probably slaves in some cases.
So, Islamic piracy destroyed the Mediterranean Sea. I do want to say that this is not true. I was going to make a generous argument. This is not true. When did piracy start coming up? Well, the Western Roman Empire collapsed in the 400s. And we're talking right now about, are we having a conversation about the 600s, 700s? Right, so there is a 300-year gap in between when we're talking about now and when the Western Roman Empire collapsed. And there is a long period in the Western Roman Empire, the territory that they used to have after they collapsed, where it was pretty chaotic, right? There are people vying for power, all the Gothic peoples, the Frankish peoples, the Celtic right? So and just the people the Roman identified as barbarians, right? The Germanic tribes. So there are people. There's not a lot of strong centralized government. When you have not a lot of strong centralized government, in these cases, no centralized government, it gets pretty chaotic, which includes piracy, right? There is no central force to protect shipping or to regulate shipping in the Mediterranean Sea during this time. So after the 400s, after the Western Roman Empire collapse, that would be the point where I'd say the Mediterranean Sea became
Cases they don't
more
have slaves in
chaotic.
other cases. That's probably what happened, realistically.
All right, but
Mercy
I want
brought
to
all
hear
of
the
this to
argument.
an end. From bases in
Yeah, you
North
just gotta think
Africa
about
and the
it.
Middle East, they turned the Mediterranean into an unsafe hellhole. This crashed the European economy and made
Wait, so you're telling me that all the way back then they were going out and fucking with boats?
Bro, people have been fucking with boats. If that's the language you want to use, people have been fucking with boats for thousands of years. Right? That is in this time that is where 100% of the shipping is done. Not exactly. I'm being hyperbolic here, but
And now they're still going out fucking
right.
with boats. This was literally over 1,000 years ago. They've been fucking with boats for 1,000 years.
I like how we're just being racist.
1,000 years.
You
We're
can just
doing
be
these guys
racist.
fucking with boats. Oh my god.
It's good.
Europe a miserable place for commerce for almost
It's what they
400
do, yeah.
years. Islam's so-called Golden Age came at Europe and Christianity's expense.
Uh-oh.
This is the true
That's not
reason
true.
that many consider the years 600 AD to 1000 AD a dark age for Europe.
Oh, that's 'cause of
It was
That's
literally
not why.
cut off from the entire world and
That's
constantly
not
under
why.
attack.
Uh-huh.
It was
Okay,
in this
I'm gonna
hellish
end this.
environment that Christendom
And we're going to pick this up in a second. It's just not true. So, what happened in 600 AD to 1000 AD to make it. Okay. So, what's going on between 1600 AD and 1000 AD? So, let's look at 400. Right, so we have a pretty. Right, the Huns are coming in, but let's talk about Western Europe here. We're unstable inside, but I'm saying we have stability relatively still. Let's go to 500. It's pretty chaotic. Okay, so we have our Sassanid Empire, that we identified earlier in the video. We have the Visigoths, Frankish Empire. But we have kind of what's left over of the groups that led to the Roman collapse, especially the Ostrogoths and the Gothic nations over here, and then the places that just came at a rise after, like our first bit of the Frankish Empire here. Okay, so we're talking about from 600 to 1000. It was at a dark age, not because of the failure to create centralized power in Western Europe, because of the Muslims. We're saying that's why the Europeans were in a dark age. And I'm just going to say that's completely untrue. Right? So we have a power vacuum here for hundreds of years. We have the most industrious empire that we will see for like another thousand years out of the Romans, and that collapses. And after that collapse, we have a power vacuum, but we've also lost that centralization, the roads, the currency, the technology. That's what causes the Dark Age. Right? You point to one event, you say the Dark Age is caused by the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Right? So it's it's a wrong historical argument. It's just wrong. Okay. This has been fun. I will splice these streams